Next Pats podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry. Fantastic episode for you this week. We're talking a lot about this Patriots-Cowboys matchup. Can the Patriots actually get to 2-2? And what's going on specifically with this Patriots down the field passing game? Is it about the protection? Is it about the weapons that the Patriots have or don't have? Is it about Mac Jones? But before we get into that, we do have some interesting numbers to share with you. We have to talk about the secret weapon. That's right. The Patriots' secret weapon this week is a bearded journeyman quarterback by the name of Will Grier. I'm kidding, right? Or am I? Should we actually take this seriously? You remember Will Grier, right? The Patriots were interested in him back in 2019. They were interested in a bunch of those quarterbacks in that 2019 draft class. They actually ended up drafting Jarrett Stidham in the 4th round. But they had some interest in Grier, and they waited to see what he looked like in the Senior Bowl. He ended up having a not-so-good Senior Bowl, and so they drafted Damian Harris in the 3rd round instead of Grier when he was available to them. He ends up going to Carolina in the 3rd round. He spent 2 years there. Sam Darnold comes in. Will Grier goes out. He spent the last 2 seasons with the Dallas Cowboys, and he spent camp with Dallas this summer. Now, he did do a month with the Bengals practice squad, but now he's here. There's actually a rule against sort of this espionage sort of stuff that Will Grier might be able to provide to the Patriots, but it doesn't apply to his situation specifically. The rule is against signing practice squad players to your active roster 6 days or less before you face a particular opponent. So if the Patriots wanted a Cowboys practice squad quarterback this week, they wouldn't be able to get him. There's rules against it, which tells you the league and owners and teams, they do think there's something to this exchange of information that happens. But again, Will Grier most recently with the Bengals practice squad, so that rule doesn't apply. Good thing for the Patriots because maybe, just maybe, he can help them get a win on the road when they are a touchdown underdog. And maybe he can help them both offensively and defensively. Not only has Grier played under Mike McCarthy, former offensive coordinator Kellen Moore, new OC Brian Schottenheimer, but Grier's practiced extensively against the Cowboys defense, led by Dan Quinn. And it sounds like the Cowboys are preemptively thwarting whatever intel Grier might be able to provide them. Here's Schottenheimer from earlier this week.
Yeah, we're always aware of it. Those are things that we monitor every week, but certainly we know Will knows where a lot of the bones are buried. Zeke obviously does as well. So those are things you talk about, and you think about, okay, hey, let's adjust this one. We certainly have more than one hand signal for most of our core concepts. And sometimes, babe, as you know, you can use it to your advantage because they think that they know what's coming and they hear something, they think, oh, hey, it's this, and we're smart enough to adjust those things. So, again, everybody does it. You get a player that's been somewhere, you bring him in, you talk to him about different things, and then you're very selective about how much you put into it. And so, again, excited to see Will. It'd be great to see him, but I'm sure he's definitely being interrogated and probably spending a lot of late nights with their defensive coaching staff.
The Patriots, meanwhile, haven't said they won't pump Grier for information, even if it won't look quite the way Schottenheimer described, as though they're shooting a Mission Impossible flick in Foxborough. Here's Bill O'Brien on the potential Will Grier impact this week.
Interrogating, Shotty's a good guy. I've known Shotty for a long time. I think that's the way it is, every week in this league, every year in this league. There's going to be guys that come into your organization off of teams that you're about to play, and it goes both ways. It's always going to happen. So, I don't think that really, at the end of the day, you got to study the film. Everybody's got to be on the same page with what we're doing. I've never thought in my years in the league that any of that was a real overriding factor in a win or a loss. It comes down to the players on the field and the coaches putting the players in the right positions to make plays. And, that's what we're trying to do. I don't think we're trying to hold a light over anybody and, tell me what you did on, July 20th of 2023. We're not doing that. We're not interrogating anybody. We're just trying to put together the best game plan we possibly can.
Even Cowboys owner Jerry Jones was asked about the Will Grier effect earlier this week, saying, "You've got a lot of people reading your mail quote unquote, as if to imply that teams around the league have some sort of understanding week to week, what your hand signals look like, what your calls at the line might be. There's a lot of different ways to acquire that kind of information, but Jones did go on to say when he was on 105.3, The Fan down in Dallas, that it's not quote unquote terminal for a team to guess what it is you might be doing. So what's real, what isn't, what kind of impact can this sort of thing have in a given game? What kind of impact can Will Grier make for the Patriots this week? What helps and what doesn't? If only we had a quarterback who's played for 7 different teams over 14 years. Can we get one of those in right now? So now we seek the truth. Who's giving us the truth? Does this stuff actually matter? For those answers and more, we've got our guy, Matt Cassel, the great Matthew Cassel, our Peacock brethren, Matt Cassel. Thanks for being with us, man.
It's great to be with you, brother. As always. I mean, look at your beautiful backdrop, your perfect hair. I mean, what better scene could you set up right now?
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm directly in the sunlight right outside the media workroom at Gillette Stadium. Last week, we tried in a closet at the workroom inside Gillette Stadium for the media. It didn't just, I don't know, it just didn't feel right. Wasn't my kind of vibe. It feels a little better out here, a little freer.
I get it.
And I get to hang out with my buddy. So I'm feeling good. I want to know how you feel about all this stuff, though. You're a man who played for several NFL franchises.
Right.
I'm sure, or I assume that at some point you were in Will Grier's shoes, where your team was about to play a team that you had just been with.
Right.
Were you tapped for information? Does that stuff actually go on behind the scenes in the NFL?
It absolutely goes on. I mean, it absolutely goes on. And it's interesting because when I actually went to Dallas and I got traded from Buffalo to Dallas, we played the Patriots a few weeks. I mean, I think the week before I got traded, and then I went to Dallas, and I wasn't preparing to start because they had Brandon Weeden that was going to start for that period of time. But we were preparing for the Patriots, and they talked about, I went over with the defensive side of the ball, and we talked about signals that I saw. We talked about how they set up their protection schemes, particularly their empty protection scheme, because they had a lot of different empty sets. And so how they handled 3 down fronts, how they handled 4 down fronts, where the turn happened, different maybe potential calls that you would hear. So it's an arms race. And it's also one of those things that you're trying to get that communication, because it's crazy in today's day and age, especially with the media coverage and the television coverage. The advanced scouting department will go back and they'll watch the game film from really the TV copy more so than some of those others, just to pick up on certain calls, communication packages that's taking place at the line of scrimmage, tempo packages, because in tempo, particularly when I was in Detroit, we had all words and code words that we'd use that we'd have to constantly switch up. In addition to that, the signals is a big part of it, because if you can get any advantage for the defensive back to sit out there and pick up on a certain signal that they can jump a certain route, then they're going to try to do that. And so we are constantly changing signals.
That's really interesting to me. And I want to go back to the example that you used, when you were with the Cowboys. Did it work? Or in any scenario where you may have found yourself in a similar situation, does it actually work? Does it make a difference in the game, in your opinion?
You know what? Well, on that one, we played them tough in the first half, and then the Patriots ran away with it in the second. So I don't know if it helped. And I really never went back.
2015? Do I have that right? Was it 2015 in Dallas, right?
In Dallas.
I do remember that. It was a close game in the first half, and it was sort of like the offense couldn't do anything. The Patriots offense did nothing in the first half of that game.
Right. Now, I'm not going to take credit for that. That's the defensive guys going out and executing a game plan. But it's interesting because you have the inner workings, especially those conversations, particularly with the defensive coordinator, and with maybe it's a linebacker coach that asks a specific question about specific plays. But it was more so protection oriented than anything else. Now, I never really followed up after, because once you're done with that game and you watch the film, you move on to the next week. So maybe that there was a tidbit that might have been helpful. But at the end of the day, all those little things, they're trying to pick up on any communication, like I said, or any advantage that they can use in a game or in their preparation that they might be able to look at and say, hey, maybe this is how we maybe blitz them this way or, take advantage of protection and empty. I don't know. I never went back and actually asked, but at the end of the day, it comes down to pure execution by the players on the field. If you're able to do your job and do it at a high level.
So nobody from the defensive side of things for Dallas came over and it gave you a little noogie and said, "Hey, good job this week, Cassel."
They said, "Good job running the scout team this week. Thanks for the information." But at the end of the day, since we lost the game, they're like, "It was your fault. It was your fault, Cassel. You gave us all the wrong stuff.
More. You didn't give us any of the second half stuff, Cassel."
I was like, I haven't been in that building for a long time, so.
But it is interesting. I mean, it sounds like it's a factor. I mean, even though you hadn't been in the building in a while, you're obviously familiar with the Tom Brady offense, and a lot of the stuff was, my guess is, pretty similar. And I wonder if Will Grier is able to actually help the Patriots at all this week, because he's played under Mike McCarthy. He was under Kellen Moore. Now they have a new offensive coordinator, Brian Schottenheimer, but I imagine a lot of the stuff is the same. And even if it's a little bit different, he was with the Cowboys all training camp. So this is something where the defense, it's my guess, it's like, it's Mayo and Steve Belichick are sitting down with him and seeing what they can get from him. How does that interrogation, that's how Schottenheimer put it, the interrogation process work? Do you just sit down in a meeting room with the DC and say, okay, here's how it looks? Or do you talk to the entire defense? How's that go?
No, it's usually just one-on-one with the coaches or the DC. And what happens is they usually have specific questions as it relates to route patterns, concepts, or more specifically protection schemes, because protection and how you attack somebody and how you do your run stunts and all that stuff makes a difference. And also your blitz packages on third down. Are they somebody that's going to bring a tight end and reattach them to the line of scrimmage and go to a 7-man protection, right? Or is it somebody that wants to throw hot versus try to protect it up, change the direction in which the line's turning to try to pick up certain hots, right? There's a lot of different ways in which different offenses approach blitz packages. So they're usually very specific to certain plays. They might even watch something. And then it's the communication that takes place at the line of scrimmage, especially for teams that like to go up tempo, because up tempo changes the game a little bit. Usually it's code words and a lot of signals on the outside. You're playing fast, and that simplifies the defense a lot of time, because the defense can't sit in a huddle and dial up blitzes. They've got to have a plan for that as well. But any little code word that you can give or that represents protection versus represents a run, that's a huge advantage as well.
As you're talking to me about this, I am brought back to a time where, and it might have actually been that same season, I might have my years off, but the Patriots got smoked in Tennessee towards the end of the Brady era. And this was when Dion Lewis was, so it wouldn't have been 2015 because Lewis was with the Patriots. So maybe it was a couple of years later, but Dion Lewis was with the Titans. They actually had a few people that were with the Titans. And I remember talking to some of the offensive linemen, and they felt like, man, they knew our calls, and they had a hard time protecting Tom Brady for the entirety of that game. So it's the quarterback, I'm sure, is probably the biggest help to have, a former quarterback, because of all the stuff that you guys know. Right. But it seems like, in that scenario, Dion Lewis might have been the mole doing the espionage.
There's all those types of situations, because when we have a cornerback that would come over from a different team, or a safety, for instance, that was a guy that I wanted to talk to during the week after watching film, seeing what their scheme was, how they lined up, if they had a 2x2 to 3x1 check, and then go up and ask them, how did they used to approach it? How did this DC approach these different types of motions? What were your double checks? What were the parameters of those checks? And so that was at times helpful, because he would say, hey, go after this guy, or look, they're going to try to create a bracket on this guy in the red zone, but there's always going to be a one-on-one. And you can notice that, but to hear it and verify it with a guy that's been in that system and understands it. Now, it depends on the player, of course, because there's certain guys that would walk into a building and go, I don't remember anything that I did there, right? And that's probably why they weren't there anymore. And then there's other guys that were very knowledgeable and could articulate the defensive structure and also their scheme and what the purpose was for certain blitz packages and stuff. That was super helpful, that you just have one more thing in your toolbox that you are better prepared when you go into that game.
Would you ever talk to your own offensive coordinator about the defense that coach was about to face? Like we just heard from Bill O'Brien earlier in the podcast here, talking about Will Grier and any information he might be able to provide. And as he was giving that answer the other day, earlier this week, I'm sort of sitting there saying, well, Will Grier is probably not talking to Bill O'Brien about the Cowboys. He's probably talking to the defensive guys about the Cowboys. But do I have that wrong? I mean, he has Grier, for this example, has practiced a lot, for instance, against Dan Quinn's defense. And so maybe he knows checks that they have. He probably ran a lot of scout team this summer against Dan Quinn's defense. So would that part of it ever factor in your opinion?
100%, because the fact is, during practice, during camp, and all the different reps that you get, you're constantly evaluating the other side of the ball. And a lot of it can be from a personnel standpoint. A lot of it can be, look, you've seen how they bring their blitz packages in blitz drill. You understand what the matchups might be on the outside, what particular players bring to the table, what they don't, how they're going to utilize Parsons in this game and move him all around, and what you have to be prepared for. So you're just as knowledgeable a lot of times about the opposite side of the ball, just because you've faced them constantly and you've had so many days in which that is your number one competition, that you're more familiar with them than any other opponent that you'll probably play.
How realistic is it to change the signals? You did mention you used to do it all the time, so maybe it's easier than I would anticipate. Right. But you do all this install, right? You do all the spring, all the training camp, and then you suddenly get to, week 3 or week 4, whatever it is, and you say, okay, remember all those signals that we worked on for months? We're going to flip those around and we're going to make them all different. How realistic is that? It sounds like that's what the Cowboys are going to try to do.
Well, it's so interesting because the signal aspect of your game, that doesn't just start week 1, right? That starts in OTAs. That starts in 2-minute drills. And you're always trying to beat even your own team in those competitive drills. And so you're constantly changing signals even in OTAs. Then all of a sudden you get to camp. So you usually have 2 or 3 different options. So I'll give you an example. We used to run a stop route, which is 9 yards, put your foot in the ground, come down, stop route here, stop route here. Sometimes I'd go down low, right? There's different types, and it's very simplistic, but it's giving them a different look. So if they did watch the TV copy and you're sitting there and you're going, oh man, I mean, every time they do this, it's a stop route on the outside. Or seam routes, you run down the seam of your pants here, or you'll go like this. Some of them are more obvious than others. Like we used to have one like this. I was like, that's a screen, guys. Maybe we'd change something up, and then we'd magic potion screen, so we had multiple signals for different stuff that we did. This meant 10, which meant 2 ends. It's hard for them to pick up on, but again, you have to constantly change your signals, especially with certain groups that have coordinators that have been around for a long time that say, hey, we need to pick up on this. They're going to use signals. And and it's shame on you if you've used it multiple weeks in a row and you don't have a backup signal, right? Because if it's going to be a big part of your game plan, you have to prepare that way in order to give yourself an advantage so that guys aren't jumping routes, because eventually savvy guys and veterans that go out there and play that position, they'll pick up on route patterns. And they're also studying not just your signals, but they study everything from your splits to your cuts. If you get too regimented in running routes in a particular cut, so I'm saying inside the numbers, outside the numbers, and you're constantly running certain routes, well, then guess what? They start to sit with leverage, and then they start to sit because they're anticipating. The higher percentage tells me that this might be an out route from the inside part of the numbers. So you've got to marry your route patterns together and show them different ways in which to run them as well.
I love this stuff. This is so fascinating to me. The last thing I want to ask you about this particular aspect of the spy versus spy stuff that goes on behind the scenes. Is it ever paralysis by analysis? Matt, you ever spend a week talking about the other team's hand signals and their checks at the line, and then you get to the game and you look up and you're just like, man, how many hours did we waste talking about this stuff? Because now they've changed everything. It has no impact on the game whatsoever. We're getting our asses handed to us here. Like, did that ever happen? The almost information overload that you might be able to get because you had somebody who was on the inside with your opponent.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I think a lot of people are caught up in this, and it's what every team does, right? It's just nuggets of information that you can use or not use. And as I said before, at the end of the day, you put a game plan, both offensively and defensively, together to go to take advantage of their weaknesses, their strengths, maybe eliminate a certain player. And you don't get caught up in all that stuff all the time. Now, it's just one more thing that you can put in your back pocket, where if for some reason you're in the first quarter of the game and guess what, they're using the same signals as they've used the last 2 weeks, and now you start to recognize it. That's something that we as backup quarterbacks used to watch sometimes the other team's offense and say, are they using the same signals? And then go over and maybe tell a linebacker coach or tell somebody like that, hey, they're using the same signals. Every time they've done this so far, it's a stop route. Every time that they've gone like this, like put a post in the ground, it's been a post route. So it might be an in-game thing that you just pick up on, because when you get into the heat of the battle, it's executing whatever you guys went through in your install meetings, the game plan meetings, the practice throughout the week. You're not focused on, like, I'm not there in scout team all the time, like going, hey, being very obvious, like using the signal. Now, if it's a big signal team and we think that we might every now and then, but at the end of the day, it's line up and play to the best of your abilities with good technique and good execution.
And just for our audio listeners who can't see Matt when he's doing some of these hand signals, the stop route signal is literally just him putting his hand up, like the universal sign for stop.
Universal.
Pretty simple.
Please stop.
The other one was I think you banged on your head, which I like the creativity of that one for tin. Like, you're a tin man, you've got nothing in there.
You're not overthinking
banging on your head.
Let's be honest. A go route, thumbs up, right? A go route, sometimes I just point to the ground because it was in a different direction. Other times I'd literally just swipe the side of my helmet like this. And we used to utilize these in practice all the time, but they would have to pick up on it. Like, the X has to always be aware, particularly the single receiver, of the potential for me to just change the play at the line of scrimmage and signal something that I see man coverage. We want to run a go. I just might go like this. I might not even look at him. And so, because sometimes you see these quarterbacks and they look out and they go, hey, thumbs up. Like the DB, if they have any sort of knowledge about like the game, will sit there and go, something's up. Why are they doing this? So that's just what we do. So it's not overly complicated, but there's some simplicity to like the signal system.
Great intel talk. But I want to ask you about something a little bit different here, because you were accused, Matthew. You're accused of an inside job years ago here in New England. Tom Brady, who has a podcast now. We all have podcasts. Tom Brady recently had Canelo Alvarez on his podcast. And so appropriately, he was asked who he would like to punch. And it just so happens our NBC Sports brother is in Brady's sights. Here's what Brady had to say.
Tommy, you got smacked a lot. Who did you want to hit?
I think Julian. It just had to be Julian. just shut up, Julian. No, I could never do it, and I love him like he's like my little brother. So I could never. He'd be the one if there was anybody. Not that there would be anybody, and Julian wouldn't even get hit because he'd probably kick my butt. And Matt Cassel, that would be another one. Matt, I would definitely punch Matt, and maybe Julian, but definitely Matt. Yeah. There was a funny thing. Matt was so strong, right? So he gets to the Patriots. This is an off-season program. And we had the best relationship. We laughed literally every day. And we started wrestling, and he was so strong. He threw me on the ground and would just lay on top of me, and I couldn't move. And Rodney Harrison came over and said, Matt, if you hurt him, I'm going to kill you. That was the last that Matt was laying on top of me, wrestling around and holding me down.
All right, Cassel, what do you have to say for yourself?
That's beautiful. I know that I've always had a punchable face, but at the same time, I'm sure he's still thinking about the day. The fact that 20 years after the fact, or however long it's been, probably not that long, but 15 years after the fact, he still remembers me body slamming him on the field and basically treating him like my little brother. Makes me feel good. It gives me this prideful joy that he understands, like, hey, big boy, you better not mess with me. Even though Rodney Harrison, those guys, they did run over and they were so hot at me. It was unbelievable because we were super competitive. We worked out every day. Testosterone's flowing. We get done with drills and he starts messing with me. And like I said, we were always childish humor, messing around, giving each other crap. And then he started wrestling. I was like, oh, I'm in. I love to wrestle, right? I grew up with brothers. I'm good to go for this. And not to say that his sisters probably didn't dominate him too, but I just I had the advantage. I had a big caboose back then. I used to be a like 315 for rep squat guy. I was like, oh yes. So then I just pinned him on the ground and held him down like a little, and just said, what's up now, dude? You want some of this? But then Rodney Harrison ran over and he was so worried that I was actually going to hurt Brady. And he's like, dude, get off him right now. I'm going to punch you in the face. And and he kind of was like, what are you talking about? He's like, Cassel, you're going to get cut tomorrow. 1, if you hurt Brady. 2, we're all going to kick the shit out of you if you hurt Brady. And I was like, good point. All well taken. Okay, I'll keep. It was his fault. But I just had to put him in his place.
Well, he started it. It sounds like you had to finish it, but that's why I say inside job. I'm sure Rodney Harrison from across the field is saying, why is our backup quarterback beating the bag out of our starting quarterback? This guy's looking for a little action. He's looking for a little game time. He wants some snaps. He's taking Brady down. No, we can't let this stand. Did you fear for your life? Because Rodney's no pushover. Did you fear for your well-being at that point when you saw Rodney charging over at you?
Well, it wasn't just Rodney. It was Richard Seymour as well. So I've got 2 of them coming at me because I wanted to be like, you guys want some? Like I was feeling myself at that point, but it was a whole different animal if you're dealing with Rodney Harrison, Richard Seymour. So I said, yes, sir. I'll get off. Yeah, that was more than I would want to bite off for sure.
Oh, well, I mean, Richard Seymour, maybe the most unstoppable human being that's ever set foot inside this facility. I don't know. Maybe there's a couple off. Maybe Sebastian Vollmer would give him a run for his money or something. But I mean, 6'6", long, no fat on him, 315 pounds or whatever he was. Just an absolute specimen. So I could see you sort of second guessing yourself at that point.
Right. And I definitely got an understanding for what that would have been like years after that. When I was in Kansas City, we played against the Raiders when he was with the Raiders. He demolishes the guard, comes through, picks me up and body slams me. Like he got a 15-yard penalty, which was great. But at the same time, I couldn't catch my breath and felt the entire capacity of his body just pound me into the ground. I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. He was a monster. Unbelievable story. Really appreciate Brady for bringing you up so we could get you on here and you could gloat a little bit. You could puff your chest out a little bit for taking down, all he is the greatest competitor of our time. And you just smacked him around and basically submitted him on the practice. I wanted him to keep that chip on his shoulder, Well, he hadn't proven enough with the 3 Super Bowls right before I got there.
I think he really has you to thank for that second part of his career here in New England, where he ends up winning 3 more. He's probably thinking about you. He's getting pissed off, getting himself motivated that way. So nice job by you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Anytime I can help, I'm a team guy. You
are a team guy. For that, we appreciate you. You're one of the best teammates that we have here. Matt Cassel, thanks so much for being with us on Next Path, buddy.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure, Phil.
Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get into the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/NBCSB and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. MA 21 plus and present in MA. Hope is here. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as a non-withdrawable bonus bet that expires 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. Play it smart from the start. GameSenseMA.com or call 1-800-GAM-1234. Great stuff there from Cassel. Very happy that Rodney Harrison didn't murder him on the Patriots practice fields back in the day. Okay, so how about this Patriots down the field passing game? This is the other thing I wanted to get to in this week's episode. What's the problem there? Is it the offensive line? Is it the weapons? Is it Mac Jones himself? To me, the primary issue is the weaponry, especially the weaponry on the outside. You want to be a down the field passing team, you have to have the horses. And in my opinion, they just don't have that kind of skill set right now on their roster, really beyond the occasional 50-50 ball to Devontae Parker. I think you need more than that. There's not much, unfortunately, for them that they can do about their group of weapons right now, other than play Pop Douglas more and play Juju Smith-Schuster less. On Sunday, Smith-Schuster had 52 offensive snaps to Demario Douglas's 17. Now, we don't know what's happening behind the scenes in practice. Is Pop Douglas picking up on everything? Is he understanding every single call? Is he able to be used in a variety of different situations? We don't know. What we saw in training camp was really impressive. He was consistent in camp, and he seemed to be up on his assignments there. But if things aren't going great in practice, then you would understand why he can't crack 20 offensive snaps in a game. But it's been pretty clear based on the evidence we have from Juju Smith-Schuster that he doesn't physically look right. And then when you combine it with the fact that he and Mac Jones don't seem to be on the same page, which Bill O'Brien all but acknowledged on a couple of those third down attempts to Juju Smith-Schuster at MetLife Stadium, in week 3, you're getting a guy who's really giving you nothing. And so it doesn't have to be a 1-for-1 swap, but that number 50 plus snaps for Juju Smith-Schuster, in my opinion, could afford to come down, and you could get someone with a little bit more juice and Pop Douglas out there and playing. And is he going to be a down the field threat? Not necessarily, but we've already seen him connect with Mac Jones on a couple of down the field-ish deep crossing routes. And he's the type of player who you could also throw short to and allow him to try to pick up an explosive game because he is that kind of athlete. So that's the deal with the weapons. As far as the quarterback is concerned, while Mac Jones isn't immune from criticism on some of these deep misses, for example, the first deep miss of the game against the Jets down the field on a corner route to Devontae Parker, I think that was just an overthrow. And maybe Parker slowed down just a little bit on his route, but that one looked like a throw that maybe Mac Jones would like to have back, or maybe he's fighting the elements to some degree there. So he's not completely without fault, but he's also not next on the list of folks to blame either. Let's take a look at just how frequently he's been under pressure. According to Pro Football Focus, he's been under pressure on 35.6% of his total dropbacks this year. He's 7th in the NFL right now in terms of the total snaps that he has taken and been pressured, 48 in 3 games. He's also the 5th fastest quarterback to be pressured in the NFL this year, 2.94 seconds. That's all it's taking on average for pressure to reach Mac Jones. And according to Ben Baldwin on Twitter, he has some pass protection metrics. He does this pass protection composite ratings from 3 different sources. He uses Pro Football Focus. He also uses Sports Info Solutions, which we use quite a bit at NBC Sports Boston, as well as ESPN Stats and Info. They all do different sorts of rankings for pass protection units across the league. And Ben piles them all together and comes up with a ranking of his own based on those assessments. And for him, the Patriots are the 31st pass protection unit in the league. Now, despite that, Mac Jones is doing pretty well under pressure. He's the 6th best quarterback in terms of Pro Football Focus grade under pressure this year. He has just 1 turnover-worthy play under pressure. According to Sports Info Solutions, he has the 3rd best catchable pass percentage under pressure and the 3rd best WAR, wins above replacement. They do that in football too. Sports Info Solutions compiles those, and they compile them on snaps purely under pressure. And he is actually 3rd in the NFL in WAR under pressure, believe it or not, in 2023. He's 10th in sack percentage, when pressured, pretty good. Even though he's been pressured quite a bit, he's been able to avoid sacks better than most. And he's actually 10th in quarterback rating when under pressure. So the quarterback play is there. Again, not completely without fault with the down the field stuff, but he's doing his part. And if he's protected better, he can't be 31st in the league when it comes to some of these rankings and some of these composite rankings, especially. If he's protected better, that should allow for more high quality shots down the field and better production overall. This is who they are. They aren't a scramble drill team. They're not a bootleg play action passing team. To push it down the field, they need to be one of the best pass protection teams in football. They're not. They're one of the worst. But when that area, their offense improves, and it should, especially as they get a little bit more consistency with their personnel up front, so too should the number of chunk plays they are able to generate. One thing's for sure, they aren't going to stop trying when it comes to pushing the ball down the field. Here's Mac Jones and what he told us about those chunk plays, or the lack thereof, for the Patriots offense this year.
Oh, yeah, I love chunk plays. I mean, my whole career, I've kind of thrived off those play action and normal chunk plays. So just trying to keep doing them. You got to keep the hook in the water, I guess they say. So you got to have the bait out there and continue to fish, you know. So I think we'll hit them. We're working on it. I've looked at other teams in the league and how they do it and kind of gotten a really good idea. You know, how can I improve on it? How can we improve on it as a team? The offensive line's doing good protecting, so we definitely need to hit them, and I'm looking forward to just growing in that area.
How do you get you're a fisher?
Not really. I mean, you're not going to catch anything if you don't keep throwing them, you know what I'm saying?
Great interaction there with our buddy Mike Reese from ESPN, and he's not wrong. They have been trying, and I believe him when he says they're going to continue to try, because per PFF, Mac Jones is first in deep attempts down the field, 20-plus yards or more beyond the line of scrimmage. He has 18 so far this year. That leads all quarterbacks, but he's last in yards per attempt on those 20-plus yard throws at 2.9 yards per attempt on deep passes. He's 26th in yards per attempt on all throws. That's among 33 qualifiers. It's just not enough. You need more. Bill Belichick acknowledged it this week. Bill O'Brien acknowledged it as well. You have Mac Jones there saying they've got to hit more down the field, and that would help their entire offense open up. It felt like they really broke down a wall in terms of their run game in New York this past week, and they still only averaged 3.97 yards per carry with their running backs, Ramondre Stevenson and Ezekiel Elliott. So there's more there to be gained. How can you do that? If you start to hit on some of these throws down the field, that should help everyone else. There should be sort of a cascading waterfall effect on the entirety of your offense. All right, that's it for this edition of the Next Pats podcast. Thanks so much for listening, guys. Thanks to the great Matt Cassel for sharing all his insight and his storytelling when it comes to beating the bag out of the greatest quarterback of all time. We always welcome those sorts of tales. Keep an eye out for our next edition of Next Pats next week as we review some of the things that happened down in Dallas, and we look ahead to Patriots Saints. Should be a gettable one. Any chance they're 3-2 by the time they get through 5 weeks of the regular season? We'll find out. We'll talk to you then.